Did you know that Australia gets like, my friend told me this the other day, and I actually, sorry Buzz, I Googled it to fact check you because I could not believe it. 11%.
Yes, I saw this the other day on someone's payslip that was working in Australia.
Crazy.
11% they were contributing and 11% matching. I thought that was insane compared to what we do.
They are going to be balling by the time they reach retirement. They're just going to be taken back. Like,
also, you can fact check me on this, but I think 11% is the minimum contribution.
Yeah, that was my understanding.
So, yes, you may be balling in retirement, but that's also a massive amount of your pay.
But they just get paid lots of money anyway.
Yeah,
so
true.
What's 11% to an Australian?
Welcome to Checks and Balances. This is Michaela and Jess, and we're back again with another episode of The Takeover, sponsored by Partners Life.
Yes, and today we're talking about KiwiSaver, which we know is not the most exciting topic in the world.
So exciting.
But we're going to do our best to make it fun. So just to kick off, we have to acknowledge that this is not personalized financial advice. If you want personal financial advice, you need to speak to an advisor. That's all I have to say about that. Don't take this as gospel. It's, we're talking generally about KiwiSaver here today. The point of today's episode is just to make sure, I think we're going to cover the basics of KiwiSaver to make sure that you understand what it is and that you're making the most of it, because we do speak to a lot of people who basically have no idea why they're in it or what it's for or how it's invested or any of those things, which is so important, especially when it's, going to be a really big part of your retirement plan. So we'll start off with what KiwiSaver is. And Michaela, you came into the country not knowing what it was. What was your experience of that?
Not from New Zealand.
Yeah.
So when I came here, I only became eligible to contribute to KiwiSaver, I think 2 years ago now.
Right.
And it was really just like someone said, oh, you can contribute to KiwiSaver now. And I was like, I don't know what that is, but sounds good to me, I guess. And I think my first KiwiSaver account was with ANZ or maybe Westpac. And it was basically, just employer said, you can contribute. Can you go open one? Bring me the form and we'll set it up. True. So I did that. Nobody advised me. I just went into the bank and was like, I need this.
I think that's a really common story. People, especially the banks, are quite often the people that mention it to you. Like, do you have your who's your KiwiSaver with? Do you want to set one up? Do you want to be with us? And that's kind of how they get their customers coming through for KiwiSaver. But no one explained to you kind of the concept of what it is, what the benefits are.
Yeah, like I understood it was for retirement because obviously in Canada we have similar things that we contribute to. But I didn't really know the ins and outs. I had no idea that you could withdraw it towards your first home, for example. To me, I was just like, okay, I'm just contributing to retirement. Fine. You have to do that generally when you're employed.
Yeah. It's quite a unique benefit, I think. A lot of other countries, I know when I was in the UK, you couldn't do that. In Australia, I don't think you can do that. But New Zealand, you can. So, yeah, I think that is quite a unique benefit of our KiwiSaver scheme. So, at the basic level, what it is a voluntary savings scheme. So it's not actually compulsory. I don't know if people sort of feel like it might be because a lot of people have it. It is a voluntary savings scheme. We would argue you should be a part of it because there are so many benefits. Like, why wouldn't you? But the point of it is to help get Kiwis into their first homes and save for retirement. So, and when you need to save for retirement anyway, you might as well be doing it through KiwiSaver. So when you retire, and at the moment, New Zealand Super is around 40K a year for a couple that's both eligible for New Zealand Super. But couples in general are spending more than that. So you're going to have a gap if you're spending more than 40K a year on your expenses. So if you're talking like a couple in a metropolitan area at the moment who have kind of they call it a choices lifestyle, which means you're going out for dinners.
You get fun stuff.
You get fun stuff. Yeah, you're allowed to go and do some stuff. So those people are spending 87K a year on average versus New Zealand Super, which is only 40K a year. So
on expenses.
Yeah. After you retire.
That's a shocking number to hear.
Do you feel like?
It just sounds like a lot. That's like a salary.
Yeah, I guess so. I think when we do financial planning, that's not a crazy high number.
Wow.
Like people in general, in my experience, the people we speak to are spending a lot more than that. So to me, that feels quite low, but it must be the New Zealand average, right? And so, there's a gap there. And at the lower end of that, if you're living in a regional area, so not in a metropolitan city, and you've got what they call a no frills lifestyle, you're spending 44. So the New Zealand Super just about cuts it there, but not quite. And
so you get retirement, you get chickens, cows, a field, no fun.
no dinners out, no travel. So yeah, there's a bit of a range of spending there in retirement. But I mean, I guess at the end of the day, we can't be relying on New Zealand Super for our retirement. And there's a lot of thoughts around whether it's even going to exist by the time we come to retirement. Maybe we're going to get it later than 65. Maybe it's going to be less in proportion to what it is now. So yeah, there's a few concerns, I think, for people there, and it's important that we are thinking about retirement. And the second thing I want to touch on here is that I think it's a bit of a myth, because it was a government initiative, but it's not government guaranteed. So I don't know if that's something that you've spoken to.
What does that mean?
Well, like, it's an investment at the end of the day. It's effectively a managed fund. So it's you're investing money in a managed fund that's managed by professionals. It's not guaranteed by the government. The government's not going to swoop in and save your fund.
Right. So if my fund crashes,
it's not guaranteed by anyone. Yeah. So it's important to understand what it is. It's an investment. And so, yeah, I think that's important to note what you're signing up for, especially because, if you're giving 3% of your pay away, you should know where on earth it's going, which sounds kind of scary, but it's managed by professionals who do this for a living. So, they're qualified to do it. They have big investment teams who are picking stocks to go into these funds, and, it's a diversified fund as well. It's not as if they're picking one company and going, yeah, I'm putting all my eggs in this basket with your retirement.
All my shares in Apple.
Yeah. yeah. So it's spread across lots and lots of companies, and you can actually, with your own KiwiSaver, you'd be able to log on to your portal, your provider, and check exactly where you're invested. And it could be in a range of things. Like, I know my fund is actually invested in, L'Oreal through to Apple, Microsoft.
L'Oreal, like the shampoo.
Yeah, exactly. And people don't think about that. They don't think about that there's actually companies at the end of this.
That's so interesting.
That you're invested in.
Sorry, I'm going to sidetrack for a sec.
Oh, good.
Is there any funds that only invest in Kiwi companies? Because like L'Oreal, that's like an American company.
I don't know off the top of my head. The ones that I deal with have shares across Australasia and overseas.
I guess it's probably more lucrative to spread it out.
I think that's the case. So they do have some, and normally if there's a portion of your fund in shares, there will be a smaller portion in Australasian shares, so New Zealand and Australia, and the bigger portion tends to be set overseas.
Interesting.
So yeah, a bit of a mixture there. And when we're talking about the diversification of a managed fund, like my top 10 holdings in my KiwiSaver, like guess how much of my KiwiSaver is invested, like as a percentage in each of those top 10 holdings?
I'm not going to make a guess because it's definitely going to be wrong.
So it's around like 2 to 2.5%
in each
of the top 10.
Oh,
so like my top 10 biggest holdings are no bigger than 2.5%.
Interesting.
Of my whole fund.
Interesting.
So you're across lots of different companies, you're diversifying, and that's what your professional fund managers are doing for you. So that's an important point as well. And then when we're talking about, if you're making a choice in your KiwiSaver, there are two decisions to make. The first is what provider that you're going to go with. So there's lots of different providers, but within the provider, they will have lots of different funds to choose from as well. So right from defensive through to aggressive, you've probably heard things like balanced growth in between. So, I think people get confused, the whole fund and provider thing. It's two choices to make. What provider are you going with? What fund are you choosing within that?
Aggressive sounds quite scary.
It does, I know. Aggressive sounds scary, but it is actually, if you understand what it is, for some people, it is the right thing.
Yeah.
So, and that's where the financial advice comes in. You have to go and speak to somebody who knows what they're doing. They can assess your appetite for risk, your personal situation, and then decide if an aggressive fund's right for you. It does sound scary though.
What is a defensive fund? Because I know what like a conservative fund is, and aggressive you just went through. Is defensive the same thing as conservative?
They're close. So a defensive fund tends to be 100% cash. So defensive is focused on purely preserving your capital that you have in your fund. It's not looking at trying to grow your money. It's just going, this is what I have. This is what I want to have at the end of the day. And that might suit somebody, for instance, who's going to buy a house.
Right. So if
in the near future,
maybe in a year, I know I'm going to buy a house and I don't want the amount in my KiwiSaver to fluctuate, then maybe I would consider switching to a defensive fund.
Yeah, that would be a good example of when to switch to a defensive fund.
Interesting.
Equally, there's opportunity cost of being in a defensive fund. So, if you were sat in a defensive fund for 30 years and you couldn't touch your money for 30 years anyway,
my $500 stayed $500 for 30 years.
Well, you might make a little bit, but after fees and inflation, you've kind of, all you've done is preserve what you have rather than potentially experience some growth in that investment. So yeah, there's two sides to that coin, but I think it's important for people to speak to an advisor or at least do your research as to what each of those fund levels actually means. And because each one will have a different exposure to, like we've said, the cash asset as an asset class itself is a defensive asset class. Then we've got shares and property, which are our growth assets. So each of the funds will have different exposure to different amounts of those assets. And that's what dictates the risk level that you're at.
What kind of asset is L'Oreal?
That one's shares. So yeah, exactly. So it's important to consider all of those things. Let's talk about the contribution. So who contributes what? You're contributing 3% of your pay, right? Minimum.
Am I?
You will be.
Yeah.
I will be. That's the minimum. So then your employer minimum is doing the same, 3%. Did you know that Australia gets my friend told me this the other day, and I actually, sorry Buzz, I Googled it to fact check you because I could not believe it. 11%.
Yes, I saw this the other day on someone's pay slip that was working in Australia.
Crazy.
11% they were contributing and 11% matching. I thought that was insane compared to what we do.
They are going to be balling by the time they reach retirement. They're just going to be kicking back.
Also, you can fact check me on this, but I think 11% is the minimum contribution.
Yeah, that was my understanding.
So, yes, you may be balling in retirement, but that's also a massive amount of your pay.
But they just get paid lots of money anyway.
Yeah,
so
true.
What's 11% to an Australian? I don't know. They've got so much money. So, yeah, 3% in New Zealand, let's not be it's better than nothing. It's better than countries that don't have anything
chump
in place.
Change.
Australia always feels like the big cousin who's got more money, and you're always like, oh.
I always compare Australia as I think Canada is to New Zealand as America is to Australia.
Yes, I agree with that. That is so true. Yeah, so they've got a lot of money. That's okay. We're kicking back with our 3%. So matching our employer contributions, and then if you're contributing, so you have to be under 65 and I think over 18. But if you're contributing at least $1,000 of your own money into your KiwiSaver a year, you also get, it's $521 from the government as well. So if you're maybe self-employed or if you're a stay-at-home mum, that's an important thing to, if you can afford to contribute. It's $1,000.
Who doesn't like free money?
I know, exactly. Why wouldn't you? And if you can afford to put aside, say, $100 a month or something into your KiwiSaver, then you're automatically going to get that.
And can you also, again, fact check me, but if you're self-employed, could you just take a lump sum at some point in the year and contribute that to your KiwiSaver to meet the minimum?
Absolutely.
And then get your free deposit?
Yep. So the cutoff date is the end of June. So as long as you make that either lump sum or monthly payment, whatever it is, and it's to the end of the year is June, then you get your government contribution, which is amazing. So most people do hit this. If you're a salaried employee and you're just going through PAYE, that's all going to happen automatically. You don't have to do anything to claim it. It's just going to happen. But yeah, nice to know for people that are self-employed. And one of the big benefits, I guess, and risks that comes with KiwiSaver is that this money is locked up until you're 65 or you're buying a first home. I think you have to think of it as almost a forced savings account. You can't access it willy-nilly. So, you know, and you deal with a lot of first home buyers, right?
I'd say majority of our first home buyers use their KiwiSavers. It makes up a huge amount of deposit. Even my husband and I, we wouldn't have been able to buy our first house if he didn't have so much in KiwiSaver. Because he had been contributing, I think, 10% for a really long time.
Wow, 10%.
And that boosted the deposit just so much. So it was really the only way we'd get into it. And I think it's that way for a lot of first time home buyers.
Yeah, absolutely. We were the same as well. Yeah. So it's great for that. But then as soon as you've bought your first home, really it's locked away until 65 when you can access it. So the only other scenarios you can take it out are, well, in general, are significant financial hardship and serious illness, but it's still a little bit of a rigmarole to get that money out. You still have to apply, you have to provide evidence, all that kind of thing. So consider it locked away until 65, I would say.
I think there has been a lot in the last year or so. I've been seeing in the news a lot of people trying to access their KiwiSaver for hardship just because of the cost of living. Yeah. And if you're considering something like that, that's something that you can talk to an advisor about or someone, you know, an advisor, really.
Yeah, and mortgage brokers too. Like, there could be other levers you can pull before accessing your KiwiSaver. It is expected in the way things are.
Or finding something else to help you so that you don't have to access your KiwiSaver because it's a short-term Band-Aid, but when you're 65 and, you know, there's an extra $20,000 you could have had, that's a significant amount of money.
Before we move on, we talk all the time about planning and growing our wealth, but protecting that wealth is just as important. That's why having the right insurance in place can help when life goes unexpectedly.
And that's why this episode is brought to you by Partners Life, a New Zealand operated award-winning insurance provider with over 300,000 Kiwis insured and 89% of claims paid.
Partners Life understand that having some insurance is better than having no insurance. They have flexible and personalized solutions for any budget or situation.
Check out their website in our show notes below.
So going back to the first home buyers benefits, obviously this week has been pretty major in KiwiSaver news that the first home grant has sadly been taken away. And I know James and Mike have just released a really good episode about this. It's pretty devastating. We were going to talk about it.
RIP first home grant.
Yeah, and we wrote our notes for this episode and we've had to change them in the space of time. So no more first home grant. That was definitely going to be one of the things we touched on, but you can still withdraw your balance except for $1,000. So it's important to understand the distinction there as well. First home grant, which was additional money on top of your KiwiSaver, has been taken away, but you can still withdraw your balance minus $1,000 for your first home.
With your first home withdrawal for your KiwiSaver as well, you have to be contributing a minimum of 3 years to your KiwiSaver before you can take it out towards your first home purchase.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think that that has to be consecutive, but you can actually take it out even if you're contributing. Let's say you did 2 years and then you went overseas for a bit and then you came back and you contributed for another year. That still counts as 3. So you can take it out still towards your first home deposit.
I'm just wondering how many people that affects. Like, how many people manage to save for a house in under I guess if you weren't contributing to KiwiSaver before, right? Like, do you ever see that happen with mortgage applications?
Stop and start.
Or that people haven't met the 3 years?
Yeah, definitely.
Do you?
It's also really common with people that aren't citizens and have become a permanent resident, like me.
Yourself.
So when I became a permanent resident, then I could start contributing. But you also become eligible to purchase property when you become a permanent resident. So a lot of people
think
day
you become a
citizen. So a lot of people think, well, if I can purchase it, then surely I can also use what I've got in my KiwiSaver. But you have to be contributing those 3 years. So
interesting.
That can hold a lot of people up. And I have had clients that will say, I'm going to use my KiwiSaver. And then we say, okay, make sure you check with your provider that you can withdraw it.
Yeah.
And they're so confident that they can take it out. And then they ask, and, for one reason, whether maybe it's not enough time or maybe, some other reason, and they can't actually get it out. So it's really important to just do those pre-checks with your provider.
When you're making your plans.
So you know that you actually can take it out.
Yes, that's a very good point. So we're going to do a couple of true or false questions or a little pop quiz for you. So when we are looking at KiwiSaver performance across different funds and providers, we look at this quarterly report from Morningstar. The latest one they released was in March this year. So we should be due another one quite soon. But who do you think is the biggest KiwiSaver provider in the country?
Ooh, provider. I'm going to go with Booster because my KiwiSaver is with Booster, and I feel like a lot of people in our offices is with Booster.
No, it's actually a bank.
Ooh.
Yes.
Give me is it like a blue one?
It's a blue one.
A red one?
It is ANZ. So ANZ is the biggest KiwiSaver provider in the country, which probably a lot of people wouldn't be surprised by, especially as if you're on the phone to your bank, they might mention to you, oh, who's your KiwiSaver with? Do you want to be able to see your KiwiSaver in your banking app? And people go, yeah, sure, because they don't really think much of it as outside of can I see it, can I not? Not who's it invested with, is it socially responsible? How is it performing? All that kind of stuff. So a lot of people will just opt to go with their bank. But the next question I have, which might give it away, who had the second worst performing balanced fund over the last 5 years?
Balanced fund. Well, I feel like I have to go with ANZ because of the way you looked at me.
Yeah. Yeah, so even though they're the biggest KiwiSaver, they're the biggest KiwiSaver provider in the country. As of March, they also had the second worst performing balance fund.
Really?
So, it's I think that just highlights that we really want people to make an active choice in their KiwiSaver, to understand what it is that you're doing. You're investing your money, and to do that thoughtlessly is just it's starting to kill me inside every time I'm speaking to more people, and the more people I speak to, the more passionate I'm getting about it, because it's such an easy fix. I think, you spend half an hour speaking with someone about it. They can teach you what it is. They can explain to you what your risk profile should look like. We'll talk about appetite for risk, your life situation, decide where you should be. And then we can look at different providers for you. And they could be doing, it's almost like you're missing out on an opportunity that's there. It's an easy thing that we can sort and tick off your list, and then you don't have to think about it again. We'll check in with you, make sure that you're in the right place every year or every so often, however you want to work it. But
the things with banks too is a bank's primary function isn't KiwiSaver and investing. Their main areas of business are lending majorly, and probably term deposits, bank accounts, things like that.
Transactional stuff.
KiwiSaver is very much a side plate for the banks.
The bank side hustle.
It's the bank side hustle. It's it's the fries on the side of your burger.
Totally.
But for a provider like there's heaps of them, Milford, Booster,
investment specialists.
Heaps of them.
That
the
is
ones,
their bread and butter.
The ones that specialize in it. That's where you're gonna find the best products and the people that care about where they're putting it. The bank is not where you're gonna find that.
Necessarily. And it's, we don't mean to call out all banks. That's like a real broad brush we're painting everyone with, but these reports that we use are available online. You can look it up. You can see where your bank sits. Obviously we've talked about one, but you can see where your bank sits and what fund you're in and exactly how they stack up against everybody over a long period of time. So really easy to look that information up. But I think that just really highlights, not all KiwiSavers providers are created equal. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. A KiwiSaver compared to another KiwiSaver can be chalk and cheese.
I think also just going back to people that buy their first home with their KiwiSaver, something that we recommend most of the time is, even if their KiwiSaver was with, let's say, ANZ, they've now purchased their first home and they've drained that account, presumably down to the $1,000 you have to leave in there. That is the best time to review your provider and your fund, because now you've purchased that home. That's the only time you can take your KiwiSaver out for something besides retirement or, of course, hardship. So you should be reviewing that and now setting your fund up for 40, 50 years from now rather
you
than
can
thinking short term.
You can sit and forget and go pick a provider. You're not going to touch it. You're not going to move it much. So the other thing that people might want to look into is is your KiwiSaver provider aligned with your ethics and your values? Because again, not all KiwiSaver providers are created equal, and some will make a more conscious effort when it comes to what they're investing in. And you forget, like, your KiwiSaver is invested in actual companies where people go to work and people are doing things every day. And say, you know, my investment in L'Oreal, they've had some allegedly, and there's animal cruelty involved. So some people won't want to align with that investment and they won't want to choose that provider. So there's a really good resource called Mindful Money that you can look up on Google, and you can plug in any KiwiSaver provider and it will highlight all of the companies that have involvement. It might be fossil fuels, animal cruelty, social harm, things like that. And you can then click on that and click on the company and find out why they've been flagged for that reason.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, and so you can compare if that's something that you're really interested in and you want to make sure it's not just about performance, it's also about, you know, the environmental, social impact that
you're sort of supporting those companies by putting your money, like your money is going there. Yes, you're going to get a return, but it's kind of about who you want to support.
It's having an impact in the world as well, right? Yeah. So I think people don't make that connection. And so mindfulmoney.nz is a really great tool for that. The other tool that I wanted to bring up is Sorted. We always talk about the Sorted tools because they are so great, but there are some tools on there where you can basically compare funds. So say you can plug in some dummy numbers and go, if I have 100 grand in my KiwiSaver and I'm going to make 100 grand going forward, and if I was in a conservative fund for the rest of my life until 65, this is how much I'm going to have at 65, and it will give you the number. Switch that up to an aggressive fund or a growth fund and see the difference. And the difference over the lifespan of your investment is massive. It can be huge. And bearing in mind the Sorted tool uses quite conservative numbers as far as their returns assumption is really conservative as well. So I think do that, go have a play around with their retirement calculators, and you can see the difference that this decision will have on your life. We're not talking like $1,000 here. We're talking big numbers. So have a look at Sorted, have a look at Mindful Money. And like we said, if you want to speak to someone in person about your personal situation, how this applies to you, different funds and providers you could be considering, then speak to a financial advisor.
Yeah. I almost feel like I need to review my KiwiSaver.
Maybe we should do that on Monday.
I went from a bank and I went to Booster, but to be honest, I'm not even sure what fund I'm in, who that fund's investing in. So it will be quite interesting to see where my money is going.
We should do that.
Especially because now, you're kind of forcing me to pay more attention to it. Whereas previously I really did set and forget. So that would be quite interesting to look.
Yeah, we should. So I think the main things we want you to take out of today are make an active choice in your KiwiSaver. Don't just go with whoever you've been told to go with or whoever's sucked you in. Actually, I was talking to my friend the other day about her KiwiSaver. She was saying she used to, back when we were at uni, they would give away free Vs if you joined up to their KiwiSaver.
Like the bank.
I don't know who the providers were, but that doesn't sound legit,
enough
does
for
it?
a uni student,
Yeah,
though.
the uni student's like, I'll take a free V, sure. Like, I'll join your KiwiSaver. So, don't do that. Let's make an active choice in our KiwiSavers. Be aware of the risks, the benefits, and the options that are available to you, because there are many and they aren't all created equal. And if you're not sure, financial advisors are a really big help. And it's a free service, so why wouldn't you? So thank you to Partners Life for sponsoring this episode. Don't forget to like, review, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.